Today's gospel takes place in a synagogue, and that brings to mind the gravity of the recent hostage siege in the Beth Israel synagogue in Colleyville, Texas. Such calamities occur around the world way too often. We remember the 2015 massacre of 9 worshipers during Bible study inside the Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston. Archbishop Oscar Romero was gunned down in 1980 while celebrating liturgy in the chapel of the Hospital of the Divine Providence in El Salvador. Historically speaking, security breaches in sacred spaces are not new. Way back in January of the year 825, Scandinavian Norsemen raided the Irish monastery on the British Isle of Iona, and they murdered the monks at the end of the Mass. How do we maintain hope, a feeling of safety, and a sense of our own worth as we gather to worship in our own sacred spaces? How do we deal with the hate-filled crimes that are rampant today in our schools and our streets? These are real threats to us. Where is the love of humanity? Where is the love? Psalm 71 for today suggests, we can complain to God and then plead for help. But is that enough? Is it enough just to say, God, help me? Is there something else that beckons us to do something about it? Jeremiah the prophet needed assistance as he faced trouble in his mission to all the nations around the world, according to the first reading. He preached individual repentance and community compliance to a Babylonian invasion in order to avoid total national destruction. But the Israelites, his own people, rejected him. They did not want to hear that message. God said to Jeremiah, don't worry, I'm with you all the way. But isn't it hard to believe that God is still with us sometimes when there's so much suffering on this planet? The question is this: are you and I still walking with God? In Luke's gospel, we read that Jesus himself was rejected in the synagogue right in his hometown of Nazareth. And as the gospel said, during worship, he upset everybody when he spoke about caring and loving all people, even those who were outside the congregation. And those congregants got so outraged they tried to throw him off a nearby cliff. Jesus did not accomplish his vision for all of humanity. He was hunted down and nailed to a cross for what? Because he advocated for those who are vulnerable in the world. United Methodist Bishop Will Willimon wrote that things were just fine in Nazareth until Jesus opened his mouth. Life is full of imperfections, but that's not all. There are joys and miracles. There is wonder and happiness. The late Zen Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh taught mindfulness as a palliative for suffering and a formula for loving others. He claimed that happiness and suffering do go together. But he also said that there are ways to endure and respond to the pain. You see, it seems like we're always concentrating on what's good. We don't seem to concentrate on the fact that suffering and imperfection, those are the norms in life. You can't escape it. We're all going to die someday. So in the meantime, we try to do whatever we can to make things tolerable. Thich Nhat Hanh was an influential peace activist, and he believed in the importance of practicing love. True love has the power to heal and transform any situation and bring deep meaning into our lives. In order to bring happiness to others, he wrote, it's essential to accept yourself, love yourself, heal yourself. Award-winning author Dara Horn affirmed the monk's advice in her recent and very penetrating book on the lack of respect for Jewish lives, not only in the United States but around the world. What's going on there? The freedoms we nourish and cherish, she wrote, are meaningless without our commitments to one another, to civil discourse, to actively educating the next generation, to welcoming strangers into our midst, to loving our neighbors. The beginning of freedom is the beginning of responsibility, she wrote. It's exactly what Jesus taught us. Last week's letter from Paul to the people of Corinth suggested how we might carry out our mission. He listed the many gifts last week that we can use to make the world a better place. The passage today describes, so well read by this young man, the passage today describes at length one of those gifts, the power of love. Paul stresses the importance of love in absolutely everything we do. Succinctly, if I have faith, he wrote, if I have faith to move mountains but do not have love, I am nothing. I am nothing. You and I can push back the blatant deprivation of human rights that has occurred over the course of human history. But because we are complex creatures with individual opinions and goals in our own lives, getting along with one another is not easy. The result is that we become vulnerable then to the weaknesses of our own making. We're the ones who create the problems, each and every one of us around the world. If we do something, then we can make things better. But if we do not do something, those defects in life will snuffle and stifle out all of our joys, our hopes, our visions, not only for ourselves, but more importantly, for our children. Yes, history and sacred texts of all faith traditions clearly speak to you and to me. When we practice love toward one another and care for one another, and show compassion for one another, regardless of who we are or what our differences might be, we bring happiness into the world.